Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show, and more specifically, Parsha and Prose. It's a series that I do together with my dear friend Rabbi Gemara on a weekly basis, having to do with the Parsha Hashvuah, the Torah portion of the week, in concert with or through the lens of classic literature. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Rabbi Gemara. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you very much. Try to enjoy the winter, although the temperatures are a little bit rough this year. And yesterday, I had to shovel too much, so I'm a little bit in pain. I just start to realize that my age start to catch up to me. It's you realize it when you shovel, and there was a lot to shovel.
Let me ask you a question. I always see you as such an adventuresome human being. You're going out into the world and you're discovering things. Your favorite country is Italy, and you go to Rome and you research it. Are you into winter stuff? Living in Toronto, the skiing, the skating. Are you into that?
Listen to this. Last week I decided to try something new.
Yeah.
We had a PD day. There was a brilliant idea by our principal that teachers are going to bond before we are going to the professional development part of the day. And we arranged a school that teachers are going to 4 different places. One of them was curling. You heard about curling?
Yes, I'm familiar with curling. Yes.
So I always saw these Chinese on the ice. I never understood this sport, but I decided to go. Big mistake, by the way. But anyway, I decided to go. To my surprise, most of the rabbis on our team also decided to go to curling. I don't know why. Apparently, there is some magic to this sport.
Yes.
It's a very Canadian sport. You know that.
Very, very Canadian.
I don't see any Israeli come with such an idea. To be honest.
Not yet.
So yeah, I tried it. Listen, I rolled on the ice a few times. I realized that the ice is quite slippery, especially when you have you are wearing something which is very slippery. So you moved on the ice and you have to release by rolling a little bit this heavy kind of rock. It was interesting. So to your question, this I skied. Did lots of skating. I learned to enjoy the winter, and I learned something very, very important. The human being find all kinds of ways to take very bad things like winter and ice and snow that usually will be very distracting to your life and make them fun.
Yes.
And therefore, I think it's a philosophy here that you sometimes can take things and you see them as something against you, something which are very bad, but with some creativity, you can do them a little bit more fun. So, by the way, on the Shabbaton, I learned two things. Number one, we are our Shabbatonim are next to Lake, next to Lake Simcoe.
Lake Simcoe, yes.
Yeah. And not far away from the Shabbaton, if you walk like 300 meters into the lake, which is completely frozen, there is ice fishing. You heard about ice fishing?
Yes, I'm familiar with it, yes.
So I went to see them, like a few people, like they have a tent and lots of beer, of course. That's apparently very essential to the
Canadian.
Very Canadian. And they fish. They like drill into the ice and they actually fish it, which is quite amazing. This was one. Last Shabbaton, I saw something new which really talked to me as someone was in a parachuting unit.
Yeah.
There is a sport where you have like a small parachute and you can skate on the lake where the wind is carrying you very, very fast. It's really like amazing. Like the people who are doing it did it in unbelievable speeds. So again, another example to how people can really enjoy things, even when normally you will see like the ice and the wind and the low temperatures, but they still have lots of fun. I admire it.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is part of the Parsha and Prose we call Chivim Panim. And it's essentially a moment where the rabbi and I get to know each other a little bit more. And we talk about things that are significant to the Jewish people, Torah, and Israel. Rabbi, I remember when I was in Israel, there was a game that you would play on the beach with a paddle. It's similar to today's pickleball, but do you remember what that game was with that paddle?
Matka, that's like a
Right.
national, like you cannot go without like being hit here and here all the time by these like black balls, of rubber. But this is all the fun being on the beach in
Do you
Israel.
play that on the beach yourself?
When I was, of course, I mean, you cannot go to the beach without doing it because I never liked too much the sea itself. I liked to go to the pool, but the sea, I found it a little bit too salty, to be honest with you.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, I played quite a lot. Matkot.
Friends, I want to just speak for a moment about the hostages. There is word in the media today that we should expect the release of more hostages and some bodies. And this is extremely harrowing. It's very, very sad. And we're not quite sure who those bodies will be of, and we fear the worst. But we want to take this time together with you in terms of learning Torah and to give of our energy and the schut of our Talmud Torah and give it out to those individuals in Israel, our Jewish people, our brothers and sisters, to them and wish them well, and God should watch over them. It's a very difficult time, and we can only hope for the best. I mentioned last week that Yair Moses, whom I had interviewed previously, his father Gadi, was released as a hostages, and similarly Or Levy, whose brother I interviewed, Michael Levy. These are Stoics. These are warriors of individuals, and to watch them embrace their family member after knowing them a little bit and speaking with them a couple of times, I felt so much part of Bnei Yisrael, of the children of Israel, and part of this time. Rabbi, anything to add to that?
Rumors are that a part of the people that are going to come back, unfortunately, in coffins, are the Bibas family. It was published all over. And let me tell you, this is like heartbreaking news. They were alive. They were alive. Someone killed a mother and their children. Our Torah say that you cannot shecht like a goat and its calf in the same day. It is the most cruel thing. And here a mother with two beautiful kids. And to think that there are still people in the world that side with these barbarians, like, how is that possible? Avrum, how that possible? You can be a freedom fighter, you can be all kinds of things, but people who can side by a group that is killing a mother and her two children, if people side with them, they are not human beings.
Rabbi, what do you think that is, actually? How do people side with such individuals?
You know what? Every time I realize that I don't fully understand the psyche of human beings. Hashem gave us bchira chofshit, like free will, and people can do wonders, and people can go to the lowest of the lows. I don't know to explain it. I really don't know to explain it because, like, this is abnormal. Every human being feels some um, rachmanut uh, for a mother and children, and here to shech them in such a way. You know what? I can't explain it. I'm completely speechless. I don't think that anybody can explain
One of the things that you spoke of, in fact, a few weeks ago, in terms of your Torah learning, is that when you study Torah, you read it and then you apply it, and you see in the case of a story that we study in the Torah how it would apply today. So, in terms of my question to you, how is it that individuals align themselves with such barbarians as Hamas? Asaph, Asaph, who wasn't considered to be a really good guy, he had an enormous following. 400 of his men came to visit Yaakov when they were greeting after many years. You find it in the Torah that there were individuals who sided with what we'll call the good folk and individuals who sided with not so good. So I'm wondering if you can pick up on that at all.
it. I can pick up, but then we will have to talk about it for a long time. Listen, unfortunately, um, these people have a religion. That is the most disturbing thing. They are religious people. They believe in Allah. They kill a person and they scream Allahu Akbar, which means like God is the greatest. To me, it's so offensive. As a religious person, as a rabbi, it's just offensive that you can commit the most heinous crimes and to shout Allahu Akbar. How is that possible? To be honest with you, this kind of evil, I want to be very careful, but this kind of evil can be only for religious people. You might be surprised, but these people think, okay, that's what God want me to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing actually a good thing. I'm actually sanctify the name of God, Allahu Akbar. And when people think that they are agents of God, forget about it. They will do the worst thing in the world. And we are dealing with people like this. If you remember the pictures on October 7th, all the leadership of Hamas, many of them were eliminated over the last 500 days. But what was the reaction? They bowed on the floor, on the rugs, and thank Allah for their great achievement. We are talking about people who raped, who burned alive, who killed families. And they think that they are doing the right thing. So what can I tell you? Like, I cannot get, I cannot understand how people can act this way. And I cannot understand how a religion will encourage such barbarian acts. I don't. I don't. But you know what? Some people will say that I'm Islamophobe or like I have all kinds of problems. And I want to be honest. Like, it's not about Islamophobe. I'm talking about the actions here. And I think these actions for a human being, civilized human being, is you cannot understand it. There is no way to explain them. No way to explain them.
Rabbi, this past week I was sent a documentary which was created by Igal Hecht, who lives here in Toronto. And it was on October 7th. And he traveled to Israel and he did his research and he put together, I think, an hour and a half documentary having to do with what happened on that day using footage that was available to him, both from the cameras of the terrorists themselves and also from the camera of the Israelis. And it's the first time that I watched footage of October 7th because I'm not the type of person who's able to do that. I've never seen Schindler's List as an example. I think in terms of images. And when I see a dead squirrel in the middle of the road, I can't get that dead squirrel out of my mind for days. Lehavdil, which is obviously a clear separation between the squirrel and what I'm speaking of. But for 2 days, I was so melancholy. I was so saddened by what happened to our people in such a terrible way, and saddened by the fact that there are human beings who have the ability to do that. It was much too hard for me to watch, to the extent that I couldn't finish it. Can you watch that stuff? Are you able to watch such things?
I try not to. Sometimes it crosses my way, on social media. If I look at Twitter and things like this, I don't have the stomach to digest something like this. To be honest with you, I'll tell you another thing. Now in Toronto, in the Rome, there is a display of things from Auschwitz, and I really feel very close to it because, again, my in-laws went through it, and I know many people who were in Auschwitz. Unfortunately, my grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. And everyone said you have to see that, and I know that I have to see it, but I'm not sure that I can see it because, as you said, it's like days and days afterward that I'm completely under the influence of something like this. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't see it, but at the same time, every person is different. And for me, and I'm not a person who take things too much to my heart, but this I find something that is very difficult to deal with, especially for me as a Jew, and to even not re-experience, of course, but even to recall and to bring it back to my consciousness. I find it very, very difficult. Most likely, I will go to see it, but I struggle with myself about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to see that documentary of which I speak, again, it was created by Yigal Huck, and he did a brilliant job. It's called The Killing Roads, and it is available on social media. Now, I'd like to announce to you something very special. We'll go into a happy place here, Rabbi. We've talked about potential sponsorship and advertising on the show, and I said that I would bring to you something special, and here it is. You can see that there are opportunities for advertising and for sponsorship on the show that come in the form of many, many different dollar levels. If you'd like to sponsor an entire month of Parsha and Prose, then you have the option of doing that. If you'd like to sponsor one, or just as send a muzzle tov or a fua shalema, you should get better soon, to somebody, then you have that option as well. So here you have it. I'm going to leave it up on the screen for 5 more seconds. And if you'd like more information, please be in touch with me at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com, or you can be in touch with the rabbi, and his email is at the bottom of his screen. Any thoughts on that, Rabbi?
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. And as I said always, I think it's a wonderful way to share Divrei Torah with the community of Toronto, with community elsewhere. I just told you before the podcast, I was last Shabbat in New Jersey, and few people love our episodes, even southern of Canada. And I think it's a wonderful way to support spreading, refreshing new ideas about the Torah and bringing people closer to our Torah.
Rabbi, I also want to mention is sometimes it's good to pat ourselves on the back. That I spoke to a fellow yesterday in Kansas City, and he is a Noahite. And Noahite is a Gentile, a non-Jew, who follows the 7 laws of Noah. So indeed, he does not eat a live limb from an animal. I asked him if he does. He goes, no, of course not. It's interesting, by the way. We should talk about that one day, why there is such a law. Do not eat a limb from a live animal. Who would do
Okay, wait, stop there. Stop there, because it's very, very important to understand. You see, in our society, we don't understand it. Do you know that until this very day, there are people in Africa, for example, who are doing exactly that? Think about a place with no refrigerator, and you want a big animal to eat for 2 weeks. You know what you are doing? When you don't have a refrigerator and you want the meat not to rot.
So I know. Yeah, go ahead.
And the Torah was aware of what people are doing sometimes, because people, I mean, in our society, if people just imagine what I just said, that you cut like a leg today and a leg tomorrow, they will like can't believe that people can do it. In ancient time, then I'm telling you, in certain places today, it's still an issue. And the Torah was revolutionary to say, no, you are not allowed as a human being to do something like this to an animal.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I feel nauseous now at the idea. But my point was, I spoke to this Noahide fellow. I'm going to be interviewing him on my podcast, and he likes Parsha and Prose as well.
And I'm sure you will like our episode, which is talking about Huckleberry Finn along the Mississippi River.
Very good.
I'm sure he will love this one.
So let's dive into Parsha and Prose, ladies and gentlemen. Just before we do that, I want to tickle you a little bit. Next week, God willing, will be Parsha Truma. And we have a very, very special approach to Parsha and Prose. It's going to be a little bit different than we've done in the past. Rather than doing it through the lens of a novel, we're going to bring a guest on the show. And his name is Yitzchak Levitt. Yitzchak is a beautiful man whom I've interviewed before. He is the director of the Givati Brigade Association. He fought in the Givati Brigade, and he travels around the world raising money for various different programs to remember the Givati soldiers who have passed, to help support their parents, and many, many other things. So, Rabbi, it's going to be a fascinating show, and we want people to tune into that. Are you excited about that?
Very, very much so. Absolutely.
Okay, good. Ladies and gentlemen, the show is called Parsha and Prose. And this week we are talking about a very robust Parsha, and it's Parshat Mishpatim. Let me tell you a little bit about that. Parshat Mishpatim, found in Exodus 21:1 to 24:18. It's the 18th weekly Torah portion, and it shifts focus from the dramatic events of the Exodus and the revelation at Sinai to the very practical aspects of living as a holy and just community. This portion outlines a wide range of laws addressing everything from civil and criminal justice to social ethics, with a particular emphasis on the fair treatment of the vulnerable, such as slaves, widows, and orphans. Mishpatim provides detailed regulations for property damages and restitution, establishing a framework for societal harmony and individual responsibility. It underscores the importance of justice, compassion, and the covenant between God and the Israelites, culminating in a formal affirmation of this revelation, of this relationship, through a covenant ceremony at Sinai. We are discussing Mishpatim through the lens of a classic novel called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It was written by Mark Twain, and it was first published in 1884. It's a seminal work of American literature that follows the journey of a young boy named Huck Finn as he travels down the Mississippi River in search of freedom and self-discovery. The novel is a coming-of-age story that explores themes of morality, of race, and the tension between societal norms and personal conscience. Huck, who has run away from his abusive father, teams up with Jim, an escaped slave, and together they embark on an adventure and often perilous journey. Through their experiences, Twain critiques the injustice of slavery, the hypocrisy of societal values, and the complexity of friendship and loyalty. As Huck grapples with his own beliefs and values, the novel invites readers to reflect on the moral dilemmas of a divided nation, making it a timeless and thought-provoking exploration of human nature and societal contradictions. Rob, I have to tell you, and I've told you this before, I love the way you put these together. How did you arrive at Parshat Mishpatim through the lens of the adventure?
Listen, the law in the beginning of Parshat Mishpatim about slaves always intrigued me, because in these days, or at least the way I grew up in Israel, I was not even aware to the issue of slavery in America. And now that I'm here, and many, many times people are talking about morals and about human rights, I say to myself, come on, you only 200 years ago had a real problem in your value system, and now you tell us, the Jews, what we should do and how to behave when we came with these morals 4,000 years ago. Like, please, like before you preach us what is right and what is wrong, maybe in a few hundred years you will be on a better situation. But your grandparents or great grandparents were people that we could not accept their morals already. And it always bothered me, especially the issue of racism and looking upon someone else like inferior, forgetting that every human being is created b'tselem Elokim. This is something that disturbed me to no end. And only when I came here and became a little bit more aware to the whole issue of slavery and the history of slavery, I said, wow, what kind of statement is to open Parshat Mishpatim with like dozens of laws with this law, how you treat your slave. This is, as I said, revolutionary because this is so different from the way the ancient world treated slaves that by itself, I think, is a proof the Torah min hashamayim, that really God gave such a Torah that cares about a slave, a person that in most societies was regarded as a dust of earth.
Rabbi, and you mentioned before about how religion can take a person down perhaps the most evil of paths. You know that in the Americas, the first justification for slavery was a religious justification. In other words, we're superior because we have Jesus in our heart, and we have to influence you in that area. The second justification was science. And there was all kinds of crazy scientific studies that were going on about the size of the skulls of the slaves, and their skull was smaller, therefore their brains were smaller. But really, I want to focus on the religious part of it, is how they came to that realization, which was absurd and which was bizarre and painful and destructive, through a religious mindset.
You read some of the sermons of the priests. Another very important source that justified slavery was obviously the story with the children of Noah, which says indeed that Ham, that they interpret the black person, is going to be like slaves to his brothers. What they never say is that the context is very, very different. When Noah cursed his son and told him to be a slave, it did not mean that Japheth or Shem are going to enslave him. This was not the idea. But since his morals, as described in this episode, were so corrupt, he should learn how to civilize himself by other societies. But it never meant that they can kidnap people, separate families, enslave people to their own benefit. That never was the intention of the Torah.
Rabbi, the Torah tells us explicitly in the Aseret Dibrot, the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. Why doesn't the Torah say thou shalt not have slaves?
Because slaves were part of the ancient world exactly as it until this very day. And you touch upon a very important point. According to the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, a guide for the perplexed, the Torah is totally against slavery. But the Torah knows that if the Torah will come and say slavery is prohibited, people will say, we don't want to regard the Torah at all. Because it was part of life. This was part of life. And as I tell you, if you go today to West Africa, slavery still exists. And we are not talking about dozens, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of people. And according to the Rambam, the Torah could not, or had the wisdom, Hashem had the wisdom that you cannot uproot a social phenomenon overnight. You can't. And the Torah built slowly an attitude towards the slave that will change your mind. And to be honest with you, this is another connection to the story, the beautiful story of Huckleberry Finn, because it's not happening overnight that he changes attitude towards slaves. He knows Jim over time, he start more and more to realize that the slaves are human beings. They have feelings. They have family. They have life. They have opinion. They have kindness. They are human beings. So exactly as Huck is going through a process, the Torah said, okay, we cannot do it overnight, but let's go to a process. You are going to treat your slave with dignity. You are going to make sure that you treat him well in every regard. In every regard. If you harm him physically, he will go free, and so on and so on. With the hope, says the Rambam, that eventually people will start to get used to the fact that slavery is wrong. This is one approach. According to the Ramban, it's a little bit different. We live today in a society that every person is free and can get a job usually, but this was not always the situation by the Torah. Some people actually were lucky to be slaves in certain times because the master could provide them with food, with housing, because the other option, the more evil option was not to have a house, not to have food, and to die on the streets. So the Torah sometimes take the less evil approach and said, okay, a person had no other way to sustain himself only by selling himself to an Ebed. It does not mean that you can treat him like garbage. You have to keep his dignity, and dignity is the most important word here in the laws of the Torah. It's not so much about the rights and payments, it's about the dignity of the person.
According to statistics, and I've done some work in this area, there are up to 25 million slaves in the world today, and many of them are indentured slaves. What happens is in impoverished environments where families cannot afford to eat, what will happen is they'll sell their child, and that still exists in our society today. So, in light of what the rabbi and I are speaking about, if you are looking for an area to commit yourself to making this world a better place, letaken et olam, that is an area which is very rife and does require your goodness and your energy. Rabbi, in Mishpatim, it emphasizes compassion and care for the vulnerable, such as the widows and orphans. And you find that throughout the Torah, over and over. It's ubiquitous. How does Huck's actions throughout the novel demonstrate a similar sense of compassion, especially in his relationship with
So
children?
this is something that is growing along the story. And the interesting thing is that, he grew up in a very different system of values. So here in the story, I think what Mark Twain tried to do is, although he tell the reader basically, I know what is your system. I just want you to follow the journey of Jim, not only along the Mississippi, but as you said before, the more important journey, which is in your mind, like understanding that slaves are human beings. And to me, this is the most impressive part of this novel, that people grew up and they got it like the truth, like from heaven, that there are masters and there are slaves and there is nothing wrong with it. People can change their mind. They can become advocates of freedom for every person, something that indeed America went through, but with lots of fight, internal fight, with lots of debates and segregation and differences between different people, and especially based on their color. Um, so if you just follow chapter by chapter, you can see how Huck departs from his previous understanding of the world and the system, the social system of the world, to something which is very different. And one of the most beautiful quotes is, "Okay, so I'll be your friend, and if I have to go to hell for it, so it will be," or something like this. That means that it was, the concept was that freeing slaves is a sin against the Bible. And
Yeah. The quote is, by the way, all right, then I'll go to hell.
yeah, so
Right.
it's a very profound quote because it's not like just like the in cynicism. That's the way people understood freeing slaves is going to hell. And to depart from this concept and to accept a person, Jim, for example, as he is, and helping him to get free and to endanger himself in a way. Um, that's, I think, the main message of Mark Twain, and it became a seminal work because of it, because it really forced you to think differently. And what makes great literature? Forcing the reader to go outside of his comfort zone, of his systems, and to explore others. And sometimes to see that he lives in a world that the value system is not right. Have to change.
Rabbi, I think we have to give great kavod to writers, or many writers. A few weeks ago, you did a wonderful panel together with Dan Gordon, who's a Hollywood writer, and he was also a former IDF soldier. And we kind of compared Agnon to Shakespeare loosely. And what was phenomenal to me was that Dan told us that in the times of Shakespeare, and he maintains that it wasn't Shakespeare the man who wrote these stories, but in fact, all these different theories. It's worthwhile you listen to the interview. It's fascinating. But he said that in those times, if someone was to write something that the queen did not like, that writer could either lose their hands, the hand that they wrote the play with, or lose their life. To me, that was harrowing. And then I think about Mark Twain living within the bosom of slavery at that time of his life when slavery was rife, and writing such a contentious story. I think we have to have kavod for the
Absolutely.
man.
And many of the writers we discussed, like Victor Hugo, with Lemise, they actually protested certain way of thinking of their time, and they actually um, put themselves in danger. Think about the writers in Russia. The revolution in Russia um, started with writers, and people who had the courage and sometimes paid with their life. We have to remember that they paid with their life. Um, but they went and said what is happening is wrong, and indeed it requires lots of courage. And that's what I say, by the way. The Torah itself, if we will take just the literature's face of it, what is the entire Torah? Is a fight against people who think that because they are more powerful, they have all the rights in the world to enslave others, to kill others. The Torah from Bereshit to the end of Divrei Hayamim is a fight against this false thought. If you have power, do with it something good. Never ever think that your power give you the right to do evil. So indeed, every great literature will try to fix the world.
Do you feel that today that we're called upon to be brave and courageous in a similar way?
You talk about writers.
No, you and I.
If we are courageous,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Throw it back at me, will you?
Because I don't,
I
I
think
honestly don't think that we are courageous. We are not going to pay any price if someone dislike our program today. People can just switch to another channel. Um, I don't know. The, the, the-
Do you ever think to yourself? Do you ever think to yourself? You ever say to yourself, Shlomo, I need to do this, even though people are going to come out
well,
against me.
that
Do you ever
happened
do
to me a
that?
few times in my life. To be honest with you, I did things that people did not like, and I paid the price. Um, yeah, but it's not easy.
Okay, let's segue into something else. There's a lot of discussion within this parsha and throughout the Torah about widows and orphans. God seems to take the behavior of individuals who treat widows and orphans badly. He seems to take it very personally, right? I'm going to be very angry with you. What's that all about?
Um, Again, the Torah will, like with no doubt, will stand always inside of the weak people, especially the people who are very vulnerable and very easy to exploit. Um, when you talk about the holidays, and there is a mitzvah in the holiday to be happy. And the Torah immediately said, "Vesamachta ata ve'alevi ve'ager asher bisharecha." You should be happy, but like in the same breath, the Torah does not mention only the family, but the widow, the orphans, the convert that many times come with no family, um, and every person who is vulnerable socially. The Rambam, when he formulates it to a law, he said when a person is happy only with what he had, what his family had, is not the simcha of the holiday. It's not the happiness in front of God. He called it simchat kreiso. He is happy with his belly. Because the real simcha is only if you share it around with your community, which is something that I think characterizes the Jewish community. Because from the day one that we have a Jewish community, we have charity, we have ways to support the vulnerables. And to me, it's maybe the most important thing that the Jewish community has. As the Rambam said, we never saw a community, says the Rambam, with no kupa of charity, with no box and institution that help the vulnerable people around them. So the Rambam sees it as the most characteristic thing of Jewish community, the ability to support the vulnerables.
Rabbi, both texts discuss moral dilemmas faced by the protagonists. How do Huck's decisions regarding Jim's freedom compare to the moral choices highlighted in Mishpatim, such as the fair treatment of
Oh,
others?
absolutely. Think about indeed the whole idea of Eved. Eved is the most vulnerable person. He belongs to you, he's part of your property, so to speak, and you can treat him as you wish, isn't it? That's exactly what Huck saw all his life. And he hear from Jim that everyone who treated him in a certain way thought about him not as a human being, but as a property. The Torah says clearly in the Parsha of Eved, if you have only one mean, and the question is it going to me as a master or the slave? It's going to the slave. That's unbelievable. Your slave and his comfort comes before the master comfort. I think this is a screaming statement of the Torah, how the Torah view every human being. Your slave to certain things is greater than you. You have to take care for him before you take care for yourself. And I cannot think about more social awareness than this kind of laws. And listen, again, when I think about Huck and what he had in mind in the beginning of the novel, and the understanding that, wow, slaves are human beings, if he would learn Torah, he would know it long before he had to take this journey with Jim.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure Mark Twain studied this parsha
Oh,
before he wrote
that's
the
not
book.
even a question. Mark Twain was an interesting guy. We have to talk about him one day and about his religious side. He was a character, no question about this one. But he was a religious person. Although sometimes he saw certain things in in hypocrisy. He saw a thing that people, preach for one thing and do the other ones. He was aware of it, but he was a religious person.
I want to diverge for a moment because, as I said before, this parsha is action packed. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. We could do a podcast for the entire year just on this parsha, but I do want to focus on one pasuk, on one line in the Torah, and I really, really want to hear what you have to say about this. The Torah says in Parshat Mishpatim, this week's parsha, is that if you're walking along and you see the ass, you see the donkey of your enemy by the side of the road, and it can't get up by itself, that you have a chiyuv, you have an obligation to go over and help that donkey of your enemy. Why does the Torah tell us it's of your enemy?
Number one, I just want to tell you that, and I think it's very, very important to our listeners to know it. I'll tell you a story that happened to me about 2 years ago. And this is the first time that I learned about it. Today, there are no donkeys. We have cars. About 4 hours before one of my flights, I hit a curve on my street on Clanton Park, and like a flat tire. Now, can you imagine, like I was on my way to buy something and go back and then to order, to book a cab, and here I'm with a flat tire. Don't know what to do. Because I never changed the tire, and I was under enormous stress. It happened, in a Jewish neighborhood, and a lady come from her house, and she said she knew me. I did not know her, and she said, Rabbi Gemara, why don't you call Yedidim? I said, who are Yedidim? So she said, you don't know what Yedidim is? I said, no. So she said, there is a Jewish organization here that help people in situations like you. I said, really? Never heard about it. I don't have their telephone number. So she went, and on the box of milk, there was the telephone number of Yedidim, which means in Hebrew, friends, good friends.
Friends.
In 10 minutes, arrived a guy, I never met him before, with a smile, with few tools. Avrum, in 5 minutes, my car was running. What about money? No, we don't take money. It's for the mitzvah.
Yeah.
So, you don't need a donkey. You might have a car, a new car, and you need help. And people, 4,000 years after the Torah was given, are still happy to do it with a smile for no money. How great is this one? Now, why the Torah said, Chamoroi becha? Your question is our sage's question. They also ask why the Torah talks about the donkey of your enemy, of your foe. And listen to what their answer is. Their answer is that if you have 2 donkeys, one of your friend and the other one of your enemy, who do you go to? Well, normally you would go obviously to your friend because both are in need. And the Torah said no. If you have a donkey of your friend and a donkey of your enemy, you go to your enemy. And you know why?
Yeah.
Because this is an opportunity to resolve a long time dispute or hatred or animosity between you. So the Torah see helping to someone else as a way to renew relationship, to have better relationship. And the Torah say that's why if you have the option, go first to your enemy, because you might find it more than just the mitzvah of helping him. You might renew your relationship with him. And I find it as a completely new way to think about our relationship. Relationships are created by us not getting and receiving something from someone else, but you give to someone, and that's what creates the relationship.
I think the Gemara says, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's your chance to be kovish Yetzer Hara.
Exactly.
Right? Your bad inclination. You can overcome it at that point. Can you think of, or do you have situations in your life because you're a leader, because you're a rabbi, because you're a Rosh Yeshiva, and you're an important fellow in the community. Have you had situations, Rabbi, where someone who you didn't like, you had to do something for them, you had to respond to their needs?
I have very few people that I don't like.
That's good to
I like the Jewish people. The Jewish people are nice. If you just like peel lightly, you don't have to go too far inside. Like every Jew has something very sweet about him. But it happened to me sometimes that I was hurt, I was offended. And you know what? Once you do something good for this person or for his child, you just became friends again. So it happened to me more than once. Trust me on this one. You do something good for someone else. This is the best way to acquire and to maintain friendship.
100%. And Rabbi Sachs talks about that extensively within his essays on Mishpatim, that the best way to find a bridge, to create a bridge between you and someone who you is your enemy, someone whom you don't like, you have differences with, is to create a project or something that you can do together. And I have found that in my own humanitarian work, where bringing two sets of people together who are not crazy about one another, but working on a project together, that they were able to create sort of a symbiosis more so. You know where you
let me tell you, I think that's the theme. Next week, we are not going to deal with the book. As you said, we are going to have here a guest, a panel of three. But if you think about the Mishkan, is like a project done by the Jewish people and the Ribono Shel Olam, who is going to dwell in this place, like doing it together, resolved the tension that grew after Chet HaEgel and the golden cup scene. Because when you work together, the relationship become much closer, no question.
And
Yeah.
I'll tell you on a practical level, today the Hutus are still helping to rebuild Tutsi villages in Rwanda. And they actually work together despite the fact that the Hutus were responsible for the genocide in 1994, of which up to 1 million people were killed.
I find this like really remarkable. And I actually saw some of the a documentary that was made about it, and I was fascinated because they killed each other like in a crazy way. And eventually, you might think that they will never talk to each other again, but life are stronger, and actually working together made some cooperation, and the unbelievable happened. They are talking to each other and building the country again with each other.
Have you ever worked closely with Arabs, perhaps in Toronto, imams?
Only once. But you know what? I see many times, people who came from what, if I was in Israel, they would be my enemies, and I talk to them, and they are nice. I don't know what they think behind their back or behind my back. And I have no problems to talk to them. I have no problem. I wish that, the way we behave to each other here will somehow affect the people in Israel and around. And it hurts me when I see people who are coming to Canada and demonstrate against Israel and against the Jews. That really hurts me. It should be very different. We should maybe be a model to different relationship. And that's exactly what I talked before. When people are motivated religiously, this might be very dangerous. I have to admit it. And I'm a religious person.
Rabbi, there's a classic pasuk in this week's Parsha, and it's Exodus 21:23-25. It reads as follows: "But if there's a serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand. foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. Yet we know that there is nowhere in the Torah which offers a prescription for finding justice, that if someone, God forbid, knocks someone else's eye out, nowhere in the Torah does it tell you, you go take out their eye, right? But yet the Torah says it explicitly.
I think it's an excellent question, which will give us a good insight into the way the Torah is written. In the Torah, we have the ideal and we have the practical. Many, many times, the Torah describes a world that should look like a paradise. Gan Eden is an ideal world. But the real world is a world where the human being sin, he's expelled from paradise, he has to work hard to get his food. And the whole story of going out of Mitzrayim, in the ideal world, Moshe Rabbeinu would come to Paro. Maybe the Jewish people will be never slaves. After they were slaves, Paro will say, of course, it's not right to enslave, other human beings and let them go. In the practical world, it's going differently. And I think when it comes to the area of laws, it's not much different. Let's take indeed the pasuk of eye for eye. In reality, if you took the eye of someone else, your eye should pay for it. You should feel what you caused another person. This is in the ideal world. But in reality, number one, what are we going to get? Now, two people are losing a limb. The person that you took you took his eye out, is not going to gain anything from you losing your eye. What about your family, his family? What about the differences in eyes? Let's say a person who is 80 years old and his eyes worse very little, took the sight of someone who is 20 years old. Can he pay with the eye of 80 years old for an eye of 20 years old? So when we come to practical issues, eye for eye is going actually to distort the justice. And the only way to get some justice here is to replace it with money that will help the person who lost his eye to sustain his family better, to give him something that will help him with the tragic situation that he lost his eye. But the Torah wants you to know, in the ideal level, you should actually lose your eye for taking the eye of someone else. It's not, you cannot think for a second that money replaces the eye. The real replacement to an eye is only when you are going to go through the understanding what does it mean to lose an eye. On the practical basis, the Torah replaced it with compensation. So I think it's exactly the way the Torah Shebichtav versus Torah Shebal Peh. The Torah Shebichtav, the written Torah, is talking about an ideal world. In ideal world, you took someone's eye, you have to go through the same suffering in order to understand it. In the practical world, it's impossible, therefore pay with money.
I think a few weeks ago you said gematria is referred to as the dessert, right?
Right.
The dessert of Torah. There was something that I heard a long time ago about ayin tachat ayin, and the way to read it is that ayin, you look underneath the ayin, underneath the eye. What does that mean? That if you take the letter, right, if you take the letter after ayin in the aleph bet, you get pay. If you take the letter after, you get kof. If you take the letter after nun, you get sama. If you look underneath it, when you take those three letters and you juxtapose them a little bit, you switch them around, you get kesef.
Yeah, I think I heard it by the name of the Gaon Vilna, the Vilna Gaon, and it's really fascinating.
Nice little thought. Rabbi, as we're about to conclude Parsha and Prose this week, just a couple more questions for you. There's a wonderful quotes that Mark Twain writes within this book and his other books. One of the quotes in this book, The Adventure of Huckleberry Finn, Huck is reflecting on his attempt to pray while struggling with the guilt of helping Jim escape. There's a quote reveals Huck's evolving sense of morality, where he begins to question the righteousness of the social and the religious norms he's been taught. And the quote is, "You can't pray a lie. I found that out." Does the Torah Judaism jump out at you there? You can't pray a lie.
So we have a very important principle. En shaliach ledvarav. I'm sorry. We have the principle that you cannot do any mitzvah, for example, bringing a korban with a stolen item, which is quite the same. Like, you cannot hold on one hand like a sin in your hand, and at the same time to feel holy by bringing it to a higher purpose. So I think this idea of mitzvah abba ba'avera, like mitzvah, something that's supposed to sanctify you, and you use a mitzvah for this, is a sin by itself. And the pasuk said, "Botzea berech mi'etz Hashem." A person who is give a bracha on a stolen loaf of bread is actually curse God. So you think yourself you are doing the right thing, but actually you really upset God. And I think this is exactly the idea of praying a lie, doing something which you feel like that is contradicting your prayer. You know, we stand, by the way, this issue many times. You know, one of the tefillot of Tisha B'Av is talking about Jerusalem, who is destroyed and in debris, and there is no house which is built, and so on and so on. Now, to pray it in 2024, 25 is kind of a lie, you know, dover shkarim lifnei Hashem. And David HaMelech said, lo yikon dover shkarim lifnei Hashem. Like, and maybe that's where he took this pasuk. Like, Hashem does not like a person stand and saying lies to him, and I guess it's in the form of prayer. So most likely he took it from this Psalm of Tehillim. And the question came, like, how can we say this davening on Tisha B'Av? And some people, to be honest, like they don't say this version anymore. They find something to circumvent it. So this concept is alive also in Jewish thought. Like, you cannot lie to Hashem, because eventually you just lie to yourself.
You know, when Israel was being established and eventually when it was at war with its neighbors, Golda Meir came to America and she was collecting money for the war effort. Now, some of the individuals whom she went to included the Jewish mobsters, perhaps like Mayor Lansky, right? And I always thought about that, you know, that money was blood money. We know that. That's what they did for a living. They absconded with funds from good people, and they used it for their own purposes, but it wasn't kosher money. But yet she did it.
Well, pikuach nefesh doche hakol, you know,
right,
like,
right. B'shas hatzchak.
when you have pikuach nefesh, what can you do? Like, you cannot be too like to be a feinschmecker, like you know, just to have like the most righteous and but at the same time, I would say, who knows what the price we paid for it?
Correct. Good answer.
You know, but it was like an amazing story, like, you know, and we owe some people, you know, even a Jewish gangster apparently has something very sweet inside him. And I'm not like justifying anything that they did, don't misunderstand me. But it said that when Yaakov came to get the blessing from Yitzchak, it said that Yitzchak smelled vayarach et reach bgadav. He smelled the smell of his clothes. Remember, he like stole it. His mother brought him the clothing that Esav had, and Jacob and Yitzchak smelled reach bgadav. So our Chachamim said, Al tikre bgadav. Don't read the word as bgadav, his clothes, but bogdav, the people who, the traitors of the Jewish people, even the traitors of the Jewish people, even the worst people of the Jewish nation, sometimes they have a little point that force them to do something good. And it's a well-known story how they got like the rifle from the Czechs, and with bartering, they sent it to Israel, and maybe that what made the Milchemet HaShichrur possible. So yeah, as I said, sometimes things are happening not in the most kosher way. So sometimes you get like the Badatz stamp, sometimes like a dubious hechsher.
Good word. Meyer Lansky was not given citizenship in Israel. I think he was the only Jew, or one of the only Jews not to receive citizenship. So something in that. And just what comes to mind, and then we're going to wrap up, is I'm wondering in the IDF if they, there are thugs, there are gangsters in Israel. Do they fight in the IDF as well?
I simply don't know. I think that actually everyone who has תיק במשטרה, he had a file of criminal behaviors is not recorded to Tzal only after a very, very serious process. I think Tzal does not want criminals because remember, like these guys are getting like rifles and guns, and you don't want a criminal to get it, and he get regular, or he get like a break from the army with a week, going with his rifle and doing all kind of side works, if you understand what I mean.
I do. Rabbi, a couple of weeks ago, you brought this great revelation to our show that you are now studying AI. I had great nachas from that. I feel like I was being part of your kiruv, bringing you closer to AI. Just before I read our poem today from AI, how's that going, your studying?
Yeah, I'm doing some progress. And you know what is nice? If I do a small progress, I just open like the sites. I put on Google Alerts, like every article about AI and education coming to my mail. It's a very good way to keep something that of your interest, like, alive, and I get the updates. So I start to doubt if I have to learn anything, because when you learn something something new about AI, there is already a system that like make it completely redundant. Like the AI itself solve the problem. So it's a little bit frustrating, I would say, that you learn something and then just to realize the next week that actually you don't need it. The AI will solve the problem anyway.
I just love the fact that you're so progressive in your own way, and you're continually growing and learning. Kol hakavod to you. So we have a poem that was created by AI indeed, and it's on Mishpatim and Huck Finn, the tale of two journeys, we'll call this poem. In the scrolls of old where laws are penned, Mishpatim speaks of justice, of means and ends, a portion full of rules both ancient and true, guiding the righteous in all they should do. Like Huck on the river, whose journeys afar, a life of his own beneath the wild stars, he drifts without chains, but the law's still around. In his heart, the code of the land can be found. Mishpatim calls for fairness in every deed, for the slave to be free, for the widow's needs. The heart of its laws be with love and care, a framework for justice, in a world that's fair. Huck, too, seeks what's right despite his own plight, struggling with rules that don't feel quite right. He's drawn to the river where freedom's at stake, but finds in his journey that he can't forsake the moral compass, though flawed and unclear, that pulls him towards good despite what he fears. In Mishpatim, the laws build a nation of peace, a place where the wrongs of the past may cease, where the oppressed are freed and the strongs help the weak, a society balanced, its foundation unique. Huck, though not bound by such laws to obey, finds his own moral path along the way. In the friendship with Jim, the runaway slave, he learns of the ties that true kindness can pave. Both seek the truth, each in their own way. One in the laws from Sinai did sway, the other in rivers, with each choice a test, both searching for justice, both seeking what's best. So in Mishpatim, the laws give us light to balance our heart to make wrongs turn right. And in Huck's wild travels, we see that the soul knows deep within what can make us whole. So Rabbi, I have to ask this question before we conclude. The poem seems something very interesting. We have Mishpatim to give us a blueprint for truth and for civility. What this poem is saying, that Huck found that within his soul. He learned it on his own. Would we learn it on our own without the Torah?
Very much like what the Rambam said. We many times have the truth in our heart. Our forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, did not have the Torah yet. And nevertheless, the Torah say that, or our sages say that they kept the entire Torah. How is that possible? They did not have the Torah then.
Yeah.
The answer is that a very fine person will feel very much the truth in his heart. We have Hasidei Umot HaOlam. They also came to understanding of the mitzvot of the Torah, and it means that a human being is capable of knowing what is right and what is wrong. And here I think is the reason why God gave us the Torah. Because sometimes you as an individual might feel what is right and what is wrong, but the entire society will not allow you to be like this. And that's exactly the description of what happened to Huckleberry Finn. He came from a society that could not accept the truth, even if someone felt it. What the Torah is creating for us is a society that will just allow the right feeling, the just feeling, the natural feeling. Remember, God created us. I'm sure that He created us as a very good people. And when He created us, He did not give us the Torah right away. It was within us to be good people. And I'm sure that this continues until this very day, that good people feel what is right and what is wrong. Sometimes the society will not let them act upon their feelings. And the Torah just gave us a space to be good, and everyone will accept it as a good thing.
I think Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird was
For
also.
example,
Yeah.
but many other people. You know what? I just yesterday when I shoveled. Let me tell you, you asked me about like people who might be my enemies in a very different situation. So we have a neighbor who is old person, and the neighbors from the other side of the street, who are all only like less than a year in this house, came with shovels to help them. I saw it and I said, wow, that's impossible that these people are going to do it and I will not be part of it. And we shoveled for this old lady. What do you see here? Like, I don't know if they have a mitzvah in their Torah. I don't know what religion they belong to. But I think that people just feel that certain things are the right thing to do.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to conclude Parsha and Prose by firstly thanking you so much for being part of this, for listening, and for watching. I do want to put up this slide once again, which gives you the opportunity to invest in the vibe here, which is a really exciting one. It's very frenetic in nature. I think you agree that what we've accomplished here so far and what we're accomplishing today, and God willing into the future, is very, very exciting. I'm not sure there's anything else on the internet that reflects our approach to studying our beautiful Torah and the Parsha of the week, and some lovely, lovely, brilliant literature that exists within our world, on our planet. And we would very much like you to be part of that. And Rabbi, as always, I want to thank you so much for our chavrusa. I just love being part of this and listening to you. I love trying to challenge you. Honestly, I like to stump you too. I'm not very successful at it, but you do something which is so refreshing and so beautiful for the Jewish ear and for many non-Jews who listen and watch our show. And you bring Torah to us, which is, I think it helps us breathe. And I want to thank you very much for that. You do a brilliant job.
Thank you, Avrum, for giving me the opportunity. Without you, a lot of things will be here and never like going out. Maybe it could be a good thing, but The fact is that many people really enjoy it, and they come to tell me, and I really appreciate everyone who comes and say a good word. It gives me a great chizuk. And I would say more than that to everyone, and I will repeat what you said. And Kemach and Torah, we need your help and your support here. It's a moral support and also guilt. So
Financial.
please.
I want to send a shout out to my brother-in-law, Jack Levenstein, who lives in Jerusalem, and he's a big supporter and fan of the show, and always very complimentary of what we do here. So shalom to Jack and to everybody else out there who's listening. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Can I add one word?
Please.
Because I think it's very, very important for the people of Toronto. 2 days ago, I heard about the petira of a young person that the Toronto community should be very proud of. His name is Tzvi Gabler, and a wonderful, wonderful young person who left his family here in Canada, became like a lone soldier, got recognition from the president of Israel, became a real fighter in the army, and unfortunately, a few years ago, he was diagnosed with cancer. Now, he got obviously immediately like exemption from the army, 100% disability. He does not have to go to the army anymore. Despite that, he decided to go to the army to continue his fight for the Jewish people, for Medinat Israel, for all of us. And unfortunately, in a very young age, he passed away 2 days ago. People like this are something to admire, that the Toronto community should be proud of. And I want to send from here tanchumim, condolences to the entire family, to the entire Gabler family.
Amen. Yeshua on that. Please stay with us. Next week, we will bring you something a little bit different for Parsha Truma. At that time, Yitzchak Levitt will be our guest, and we'll see how that plays out. We haven't done this before, but I'm sure that it'll be exciting however it happens. So we look forward to being with you. Until then, Yisrael Chai. Be proud to be a Jew. We are a beautiful, beautiful people, and we are doing just incredibly important things in our world today. Yisrael Chai. Thank you so much for being with us.